Do you have polls, and when do you and the vice president get them?
There's a bunch of folks pinging me and pelting me right now saying, you realize, of course, Harris polls worse than Biden. There's some evidence to that effect. There's also some evidence that they poll better. My advice all along has been, ignore the green eye shade stuff. You're now from Washington political technicians who love talking about this stuff and how you can dial it up or dial it down. Harris is going to be in uncharted waters, if indeed it is Harris. And I imagine that the energy that comes from this campaign and Democrats rallying around her, really give Democrats a big shot in the arm here. And on polls, last thing I would say is the two-way national average today, before Biden dropped out, was Trump up by 3, with a bunch of polls that have margins of error that are bigger than that. So, Harris is not far off the scent here, and
right.
My immediate prediction is she probably gets a little stronger.
Talk about that strength, if you would, Terry. It's great to speak with you as always. And I've had a lot of people say to me, look, Kamala Harris hasn't been able to campaign as much as she might like to, might not have as big a policy portfolio as she wants to, in part because of the relationship that she has with the president, in part because they don't want her to be out front, they want to be out front. So that wall drops. She's able to get out there. What are we likely to see from her? I mean, I've watched her at some events recently. She is a powerful speaker. She's very facile with everything that's in her portfolio and more. What do you expect her on the campaign trail to look like now?
My advice all along has been, I wrote a piece about this back in February at one point, believe it or not, about how you basically underestimate Harris at your peril. It's very fashionable in Washington to walk around and say, well, she doesn't speak so well, and there's plenty of examples of that, and you'll now see them all in campaign advertisements for the next 4 months. But where she's really strong, and and it dovetails very nicely into the Democratic message, which is on all the social issues that are the core of the Democratic message, and I would expect her to hammer away at that, and that is a powerful message not only to Democratic base, but it's an enticing message to a lot of independent voters as well. One thing that the Democrats have to do in order to win is to keep Trump underwater with independents, and Harris being a hugely forceful advocate on social issues of all kinds, is something I think you'll see them be relentless at.
I once flunked a test, Terry Haines, on vice presidential history. I couldn't name any of them, and there's this heritage back to 1802 or whatever that they're just vice presidents and they'll be okay. To the point you made with David Gurrow moments ago, do we really know who the prosecutor from California is?
No, I don't think we do.
I agree.
Thank you. She's had very much a meteoric rise, but you haven't seen her out there on her own really shining, and she's never been in a contested election before, really, other than her first one where she barely won. But California being among the bluest of blue states, this is a very different arena.
It's a very different arena, and if I could, I'd love for you to take a stab at the question that Tom asked me, so I can answer with some authority the next time he asks me. But who is she? Who is she looking for? We know what the process is going to be like. She's going to meet with all of these folks whose names we've seen floated in recent days, see who she gets along with, who might bring what to the ticket. What's yours? If you had to game that out, if you had to look at the pluses and minuses of what each offers, who does she need to pick? What type of running mate does she need to pick?
She needs a centrist swing state governor. Would be my instinct, and they'll go there. One of the things this opens up for Republicans is they've usually talked about more with Newsom, but the wonderful opportunity to run against everything California, so they'll do that, and that'll be helpful. But what they really need to do is stop the bleeding in the swing states, even if I think it's a little overblown. So they need somebody who's fought those fights and come out winning. So I'll give you Gretchen Whitmer, I'll give you Michigan, I'll give you Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania as two leading candidates that they'll be looking very closely at. Nate Silver, I think, still has Pennsylvania being like kind of the tipping point state. So if you're in the Captain Obvious mode, you pick Shapiro.
So you're in Philadelphia. I think they've won 60 games so far this year. The Phillies are just killing it, Terry Haines. You're in Philadelphia.
Hey, my Pittsburgh Pirates beat them Friday night and Saturday night. So they're
in their
surveillance correction here on a Sunday.
And their stadium their ball field is far more elegant than in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, Terry Haines, you got to go out in the suburbs. And I get that there's an issue that's demonstrably proven: abortion changes votes. What's the next issue after that for a nominee such as Ms. Harris?
I think what you have to do is you really have to goose the urban vote. So it's going to be civil rights issues, attacking the Supreme Court, all those sorts of things, and you have to be nuanced. You have to be firm but nuanced on immigration, because in order to attract Hispanic voters back, we're not that far away from the old style machine politics, but there will still be efforts to goose that turnout. But what gets people going will be abortion, will be social programs, will be kind of the traditional Democratic programs, combined with the strong thought that what Trump and the Republicans want to do is get rid of all that stuff.
We're talking with Terry Haines of Pangea Policy on a Sunday, special edition of Surveillance on a Sunday, with the Philadelphia Phillies up 5-0 against the Pirates, top of the 8th inning. Just wanted to get that in there for Mr. Haines.
We already won the series.
He'll hang up the phone.
We already won the series, David. 2 out of 3.
Let me ask you about how Democrats capitalized on the timing of this. And I mean, I could look back and I could say, look, if this had happened during the course of the RNC, just think about what that final night would have been like with Donald Trump speaking. If Joe Biden had issued this letter, now that he didn't do this via an Oval Office address, he could have sent this letter out on Thursday. Wow, that would have upended all of the coverage that this had gotten, that speech had gotten. All right, we're moving past that. We get this letter on a Sunday. How do Democrats seize the spotlight and the narrative going forward here? You have the former president weighing in that, suggesting that Joe Biden should just step aside from his position entirely now. What do Democrats need to do to reclaim the narrative?
Well, firstly, they need to coalesce around Harris, and I'm not sure the extent. I mean, this obviously just happened, but I'm not sure to the degree that they want to. I thought Biden initially not endorsing her, and then 10 minutes later, somebody pointing out to him that you need to go endorse her, said volumes about the disarray not only in Biden world but among Democrats. Now that said, if I was Harris, I'd be out there this afternoon acting like I was the nominee. And I'd be going down to the Biden campaign headquarters, kicking some rear ends too. But the sooner that she acts as the presumptive nominee, the better for her.
I got one.
Firstly,
this is critical, Terry. I've unfortunately got 1 minute left. How will she be greeted by loyal Biden operatives?
She'll be greeted with. Publicly with rapture, and privately
hugs and kisses.
Hugs and kisses, but privately they'll feel like. I mean, she wasn't part of the coup, but they'll feel abashed that their guy isn't there anymore.
Terry,